Okay, well, it looks like we've got everybody here this evening, so we can get our show started. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Cindy Erickson, tour coordinator with Westworld Tours, and I'll be facilitating the presentation this evening. Joining me this evening to tell you all about our exciting tour to the land down under is our senior tour director, Koral Romanchuk. Welcome, Koral.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Well, we look forward to hearing everything you've got to share about Australia and New Zealand with us tonight, Koral. Before I do turn the presentation over to Koral, I do have a few things that I would like to mention first. And I'll start with our upcoming presentations, and that we hope you'll be able to join us again as we continue our virtual presentation series. On November 3rd at 7 o'clock p.m., we've got tour director Carrie Carpenter, who's going to join us, tell us all about our women's only soft adventure tour to Newfoundland and Labrador for this upcoming summer. Then on November 9th at 7 o'clock p.m., Koral will be joining us again on an expedition to the 7th continent, Antarctica. And on November 16th at 7 o'clock p.m., we're going to hear all about our new tour to the Pacific Northwest. And if you've missed any of our previous live presentations, I'd just like to let you know that they are all recorded and available for viewing at your leisure on our website at westworldtour.com. So if you'd like to receive invites to our future presentations, as well as timely information on our tours as they are launched, recommend that you sign up for our email newsletter. So I'm going to launch a poll onto your screen right away here. As you can see, there it is, asking you to make a simple selection there. You can sign up for both Westworld Tours and Women Explorers. And if you're already receiving them, that's great. Just let us know that as well. We promise we won't inundate you with email. And you might be receiving a few more than normal right now as we're keeping everybody updated on our presentation series. So we can just end that now. I think everybody's had a chance to respond. So thank you for responding to that. Then questions. We do encourage you to ask questions at any time throughout the presentation. That being said, we do have everybody on mute, and we ask that you type your questions into the Q&A box located on your screen. And if you happen to have joined us on Facebook, you can type your questions into the comments section on Facebook, and we will answer as many as we can get to at the end of our presentation. Westworld Tours is proud to have provided refunds in full to all passengers affected by canceled tours due to COVID-19. After all, you should decide when and where to travel, not us. Having your travel plans canceled was disheartening enough. COVID-19 has changed today's world, and Westworld Tours remains committed to the well-being and safety of our travelers and team. We are doing all that we can to adapt to the new requirements and expectations, and have enhanced our already robust health and safety protocols to keep everyone safe while traveling with us. We ask that you visit our website for the most up-to-date COVID-19 information and travel policies. As Western Canada's premier tour company, Westworld Tours has been serving Canadians from coast to coast with escorted travel throughout North America and around the world since 2000, celebrating our 20th anniversary last year, presenting quality components, including modern, comfortable coaches, professional tour directors, experienced, courteous drivers, baggage handling, and excellent accommodations. We take in all the important sites and attractions and include several meals throughout. Thousands of travelers have chosen our first-class style of touring, enjoying the great value, security, and stress-free environment, all while making new friendships along the way. We know our tour directors enjoy getting to know you while on tour and love to see familiar faces. And speaking of familiar faces, I'm going to launch another poll now. How many watching this evening have traveled with Westworld Tours before? Again, if you are viewing on Facebook, please enter your response into the comment section of Facebook. So I'll just give everybody a chance to respond to that. And wow, it is a pretty even split. We have about 55% that have traveled with Westworld Tours before, and 44% that have not traveled with us yet. So for those that have not traveled with us yet, welcome. We look forward to meeting you on board one day soon. And to those that have traveled with us before, welcome back. We look forward to seeing your familiar faces on board as well. So without further ado, let's move on to the tour. Are you ready for an epic journey down under? First stop, Australia. Delight in city tours of Sydney and Melbourne. Bask in the glow of an Uluru sunrise and sunset. Attend a traditional barbecue in the Outback. Your adventures to the Blue Mountain, Sydney Zoo, Koala Conservation Centre, and the Great Barrier Reef will leave you with unforgettable memories. Second stop, New Zealand. Take in Auckland, Queenstown, and Christchurch on guided city tours. You'll visit the popular Hobbiton Village, made famous by the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and be illuminated by the blue hue of the glowworms in the Waitomo Caves. Experience firsthand a traditional Kapa Haka performance and fill your cameras with photos from Fjordland National Park, Milford Sound, and the untouched wilderness of the Southern Island. And that beautiful picture on your screen right now is an image of Milford Sound, absolutely stunning. So I am so pleased to introduce you to Koral Romanchuk. Koral has been with Westworld Tours for over 20 years now, having traveled the globe extensively, setting foot on all 7 continents, bringing to her role as senior tour director a wealth of knowledge and experience. So welcome again, Koral, and thank you so much for joining us again this evening.
Pleasure to be with you this evening, everyone, and really looking forward to telling you more about the tour to Australia and New Zealand tonight. All right, we'll go on and start with our map slide here. So everyone, as I say, it's really lovely to have you joining us tonight. So thank you for being here with us. This is a tour that I love very much, and I've had the pleasure of guiding half a dozen times in the past. And it really is a fantastic part of the world. And I know for many of you, and I'm sure many of you specifically listening tonight, this is a destination that's really sought after by especially a lot of Canadians, I think. I often think that the Australians and the New Zealanders really feel like our counterparts on the opposite side of the world, just different accent, I suppose you could say, although we don't think we have an accent. They say we do, but they definitely do. So different accent and different animals, and otherwise it really feels that they're our mirror image on the other side of the world. So you're just having a look at a general map here in our first slide of the show tonight. New Zealand, just the 2 relatively small islands that comprise New Zealand, the North and South Island, and then the continent, the country and the continent of Australia, the 6th largest continent of the 7 continents. And of course, much of Australia's population is concentrated in its coastal areas, of course, but we'll be spending some time in the coastal areas as well as visiting the red center, as they call it. We'll be going right to the center of the continent. So, and both New Zealand and Australia are part of what they call Oceania. So it's going to be an amazing trip down under. I was thinking too, just as we were turning the slide there, you had just a quick view of the Australia flag. I find it's actually, you really got to pay attention to the 2 flags between Australia and New Zealand, because they're actually very similar. My eyes, I'm finding yeah, there you go. So that's the Australia flag, and it's very subtle, the number of stars on the flag between Australia and New Zealand. Really not that much that separates the 2 flags from each other. But as you can imagine, there's a hearty competition between Australia and New Zealand for sure. So I'm just scooting a little closer to the slide here, Cindy, just to read off the highlights. I guess I'm getting older. It's a little harder to see, but the screen that you're looking at now, everyone, does list the tour highlights. And as Cindy was saying, several city tours. That means a lot. And I'm sure those of you who've traveled with Westworld or traveled anywhere really, you know how much it means to have a local guide join us for city tours in various destinations, and just how much you can learn from a local's perspective. So that is a part of our tour, our welcome dinner, our farewell, certainly the Sydney Opera House. Well, certainly no tour down under would be complete without seeing that great icon of Australia. And we'll talk more about that one in just a few minutes. The Sydney Harbour Cruise and Seafood Luncheon, that's pretty special as well too. I know you'll enjoy that. The Sydney Zoo, well, I guess another thing that makes us different from the Australians is our different animals. And they certainly have some unique ones. We'll touch more on that in a while too, but we do have the chance to visit the Sydney Zoo, Blue Mountains, and scenic the wildlife park there as well too. And then moving on to Uluru and to Cairns as well, we're going to see a tremendous amount of differing scenery throughout the country. Traveling around Australia is similar to traveling around Canada. It's like scooting from Vancouver over to Halifax perhaps, and making a stop in Saskatoon maybe, and a quick trip up to Whitehorse. It's a very, very large country, and yet I feel that we do actually a really good job of seeing a lot of the country. Certainly we do have to do a lot of flying to see different parts of it, but you're going to see some really diverse scenery in Australia, to be sure. In a little while, we're going to talk more about the Outback. That is, for me, it's always been one of my favorite parts of the tour, is visiting the Australian Outback. And I'm really happy that we'll be journeying over to New Zealand as well. It's a beautiful country and so much to look forward to. Some of the highlights listed there. The Waitomo Glowworm Caves are absolutely magical. They really are. My experience in the Waitomo Glowworm Caves, it's kind of makes you feel like you're floating through the Milky Way. So it's pretty special. So we'll have a chance to visit Rotorua, the Waitomo Glowworm Caves as well, Te Pua as well, learn about the Maori culture, and without going through every single detail, it's so much more to note. And at the bottom, it lists for you as well the meals that are included, all the breakfasts, and definitely some of the lunches and evening meals as well too. And for those of you listening tonight who have not been to Australia, New Zealand, but you're wanting to go, trust me, you're going to really appreciate the included meals on the tour. The first time I went to Australia, New Zealand was back in 2008. And I think my very first day there, I was a little bit shocked when I saw a menu and realized how expensive food can be there. So those included meals really will help out on the tour, because it's definitely one of the more expensive places I've traveled to as far as eating in restaurants. So you can always cut corners too. You can always do fast food if you want to, but we do have several included meals as well. Thanks, Cindy. Moving on to our first slide of the actual tour, everyone. We're looking at downtown Sydney. And I should say population of Australia to begin with, around 26 million that live in the country. Certainly two of the largest cities in the country are the cities of Sydney and Melbourne, and we'll have a chance to visit both of those. Very unique, and just like Australia and New Zealand, certainly Sydney and Melbourne have a healthy spirit of competition between the two of them as well. Sydney, I love Sydney. It's a very cosmopolitan city. It's very beautiful as well too. So it is true that Australia started out basically as a penal colony for convicts, and yet it's grown up into an incredible country and an incredible city as well. So we'll have a chance to spend a couple of nights in Sydney, or 3 nights, I guess it is actually, the capital of the state of New South Wales. course, we have our provinces and territories. Australia has its states and territories, but they have territories as well too. So New South Wales is the state that the city of Sydney is located in, and population of a little over 5 million people that live in the city of Sydney. What you're looking at here, everyone, on the left-hand side of your screen, that is downtown, and we stay right in the heart of downtown Sydney. So much that you can see and do, and right from where our hotel is situated, spectacular views of the Sydney Harbour, looking out towards the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. In the bottom left, bottom right-hand side of the screen, rather, a few small thumbnail shots there showing you Chinatown, showing you the historic Rocks district with its old architecture, and famous Bondi Beach, one of the famous surfing beaches. And we'll visit Bondi Beach as part of our scenic city tour of Sydney. All right, and our next slide of Sydney that we're looking at, everyone, Luna Park in the top left-hand corner. It's an interesting amusement park, but it's quite scenic as well. So we'll see that from our harbor cruise. We'll see that from one of the overlooks as well too. Speaking of the harbor cruise, on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, that's what you're looking at, and also in the center shot in the lower side of your screen as well, you see some of the food laid out. Those of you who love seafood, if you love seafood, you're going to love Australia. You're certainly going to love both Sydney rather and Cairns as well. The seafood is spectacular, but for those of you who are not seafood lovers, don't worry about that. There are certainly options that are not seafood, but we do a fantastic luncheon cruise on the harbor. It's a narrated cruise as well, and then we have a chance to have this beautiful spread of food as well too. So that's definitely one of the highlights during our stay in Sydney. You're looking at that harbor bridge as well in the middle two shots, and the harbor bridge is the widest long span bridge in the world and tallest steel arch bridge in the world too. Now, as I'm sure many of you know, you can actually do a walking tour over top of the bridge. I confess I've never done it. We don't really have a lot of time to do that, but definitely you will see people doing that walk over top, literally over top. They're harnessed on, most definitely, to the harbor bridge. And as I was saying a few minutes ago, no trip to Australia would be complete without the opportunity to tour what is unquestionably one of the most iconic landmarks in all of Australia, and that is the Sydney Opera House. So you're seeing a couple of shots of that there. There's a shot there on the top right-hand corner of your screen, and then in one of the auditoriums. There's actually multiple auditoriums inside of various sizes where various ballets and operas and actually all kinds of different shows are hosted. It's a really interesting tour. So we'll have a guided tour of the Sydney Opera House. And the Sydney Opera House opened back in 1973, but construction began back in the 1950s. And just a couple more things I wanted to share with you about the Sydney Opera House as well too. Looking at those shells, there you go. So looking at the shells, they actually do resemble the sails on a ship, but in fact, it's three different groups of shells that make up the architecture. So it was really an unparalleled design of construction, and you'll learn more about the story behind the construction when you're there. And the architect who first proposed this fascinating architectural design, Jorn Utzon. And it's a fascinating story. It's a bit of a sad story as well too, because midway through construction, it was way over budget, way over time. And Jorn Utzon at one point left Sydney and never returned again. So for all the work he did with his incredible accomplishment, he never saw the Sydney Opera House completed. So it's one of those kind of bittersweet stories, and yet it is probably one of the most iconic buildings in the world, in fact. Great, thanks, Cindy. Here we're moving on to some of the wildlife of Australia. So as promised, we will be visiting the Sydney Zoo as well, too, for a chance to see some of those Australian wildlife, like the red panda, the top left-hand corner. Below it, you'll definitely see wombats as well. They're really cute. They're like furry little pigs. The lyrebird, or lyrebird, I think the lyrebird is actually the correct pronunciation. It's Lyrebird. I've been lucky enough to see lyrebird in the wild as well too, but they're really interesting birds, and they have an incredible ability to mimic both natural and also artificial sounds as well. They're really famous for that. So, and you're looking at the male with his plumage as well, no doubt showing off for a female lyrebird in that shot. Kangaroos, koalas, wombats, you'll have a chance to see all those things. We definitely see wombats in the wild, or excuse me, I meant to say wallabies, pardon me. Never seen a wombat in the wild, but we certainly see them in the zoo. I have seen definitely kangaroos in the wild for sure. The koalas we tend to see in sanctuaries as opposed to in the wild, but kangaroos, wallabies, we'll see them in the wild without too much question on that. Usually it's the eastern grays that we see in the wild. There's many different species of kangaroos, and they're really an incredible animal. Biologically, they're fascinating, and that's something you'll learn a lot about when you're in Australia. But a fun little side note for you on the topic of animals in Australia. I heard somewhere, I believe it was on one of my trips to Australia, that when God created all the animals on Earth, he took the leftover pieces, whatever was left over, and he made the animals of Australia. And that's believable when you're there. They certainly have some incredibly unique animal species. And just like the Aussies coming to Canada, fascinated with our large wildlife, we are equally fascinated with their incredible wildlife. So yeah, pretty neat. So. Okay, fantastic. So again, we have this 3-night stay in Sydney, and by the way, about 8.2 million visitors a year come to the city of Sydney to see sites like the Harbour Bridge and the famous Opera House as well too. But we don't spend all of our time in Sydney while we're there. One day during our visit to Sydney, we actually go out of the city for the day, and we go out to the Blue Mountains. It's a beautiful drive into the Blue Mountains, and I think you can see from this slide just how pretty it is. We do the scenic railway. There's actually a gondola, so we have a chance to do the gondola ride and the railway as well in the Blue Mountains, just outside of the town of Katoomba, and they really do have a blue appearance. None of my pictures are quite as dramatic as that top right-hand corner. That's a really beautiful picture. But you're looking at the Three Sisters Mountains, and so that is in the center of the right-hand side of your screen. So yeah, so we'll visit the Three Sisters Mountains, and you'll have a view. You'll take that picture on your camera just exactly like that. It is really dramatic, and there's lots of legends. Well, of course, Australia is filled with lots of fascinating legends and many Aboriginal legends as well. But there's various stories about those Three Sisters Mountains and who they were supposedly when they were alive. But most of the stories, and forgive me, I have to peek here because I can't remember their names without looking. Milani, Wimla, and Gunadu are the names of the Three Sisters from the Katoomba tribe. And there are various stories, but the one that I find our local guides tend to tell us is a story to the effect of about the king with his 3 daughters, and the 3 daughters were fleeing from an enemy. It was a giant, and the only way he knew how to protect them was to turn them to stone. So he turned his 3 daughters to stone, and I forget the part exactly about the key that was meant to turn them back, but he lost the key, and supposedly the father, the king, was turned into a lyrebird. And so now when you see a lyrebird scratching in the dirt, they say that it's him trying to find the key, still trying to turn his daughters back to human form again. So yeah, lots of interesting legends. And believe me, I didn't tell that as well as a local guide will tell it to you in Australia, but that's the gist of the story of the three mountains. So it's a really fantastic day, and it's a better part of a day that it takes us to get out to the Three Sisters and back into Sydney again. But it's really nice to get out there in nature and just appreciate some of that beauty. So 3 night stay in Sydney, and then we fly to our next destination. So we fly to the state of Victoria, and of course we change time zones. Speaking of time zones, everyone, first of all, that flight over to Australia when we fly from Canada, it's about 14 hours or so, I believe it is. It's around 14 or 15 hours flying time to get over. So you're really going to mentally prepare yourself for a flight that long, but there's no way around it. If you're going to get all the way to Australia, New Zealand, it takes a long time to get there. So a couple of movies, a couple of good sleeps, a couple of meals, and not too much longer after you do those things, you actually arrive in the country. And when we're down under, depending where we are at any given time between Australia and New Zealand, if you're wondering the time difference back to our homes in Canada, we're typically anywhere from around 15 hours time difference, excuse me, to as much when we're in New Zealand as a 17-hour time difference between Canada and Australia, or New Zealand, excuse me. When we leave Sydney, we fly to the city of Cairns, and as I was saying, this is Cairns in the famous for the Great Barrier Reef, of course, and in the state of Victoria. So we'll have a few nights to enjoy the city of Cairns and its tropical paradise. Our tour is in May, so we will experience a little bit cooler temperatures in some places, but we're still going to get into the mid-20s in Cairns, because this really is tropical paradise here for sure. So we get into New Zealand, it's going to be a little bit cooler, so it's going to be nice. Actually, you'll want to bring a variety of clothing with you, maybe a couple pairs of shorts, a couple of sweaters, but it should be really nice. I've been in Australia earlier in the year when we've hit temperatures into the 40s, and it can be pretty stifling. So May should be quite a pleasant month temperature wise for us for sure. But Cairns really truly is in the tropics of Australia, and it is indeed the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, as you see in the top right hand corner. We're going to talk more about the Great Barrier Reef in just a minute, but you're looking out in these photos the view of the Esplanade, and we stayed at a lovely hotel property overlooking the water, and so it's so nice just to sit out on your balcony and just enjoy that spectacular view of the water. They call the area along the waterfront the Esplanade, and it's lovely just to stroll in Cairns. Cairns is very walkable. From our hotel, you can stroll down the Esplanade. You can take in the wonderful restaurants. There's a particular seafood I always like to eat when I'm in Cairns. So seafood lovers listening tonight, you'll like this one. They're called, I'm going to forget, Morton Bay, I think it is, something like that. Morton Bay Bugs. They're not bugs at all. Don't worry about that. They look like little lobsters, is what they actually look like. And it's a bit expensive to have them, but I always splurge one night when I'm in Cairns and have this beautiful fresh seafood. And because they're smaller than lobsters, they usually bring you about 3 of them on your plate, and they're just delicious. So these Morton Bay Bugs are really good. So much good seafood again to be eaten there for sure. Yeah, so many good restaurants, shopping. It's just fun walking along the waterfront in Cairns. And the night market, Cindy put a couple of nice pictures of the night market on this slide for us too, one in the center and in the lower left-hand corner as well. And it's actually an evening market that starts up every night. There's a food court in there. You want to just get something, inexpensive and easy to eat and fast. You can go for some fast food, or maybe just stroll the waterfront and eat an ice cream cone. But it's fun to go shopping in the night market. There's, little massage shops in there that pop up at night. Nice to sit and have a foot massage or just shop a little. The night market's a lot of fun. So I guarantee you'll enjoy Cairns very much. And I should say as well, they don't pronounce it Cairns. It's Cairns. Now, for us as Canadians, our pronunciation is definitely not the same as how the Aussies pronounce many of the communities, but Cairns is definitely closer to correct than Cairns is. They don't pronounce that R the same way that we do typically. a really spectacular day that we get to enjoy in Cairns is our day trip out to the Great Barrier Reef. Now, you also have a free day in Cairns as well, and there's so much I could tell you about fantastic things to do with your free time. I love the aquarium; it is so good in Cairns. So that's a fun thing to do when you get some time, just to see some of those fascinating sea creatures and fish that are really nothing like anything I've ever seen anywhere else in the world. And certainly not in any aquarium I've ever been to in North America. So some really, really fascinating stuff. But certainly another one of the great icons, I suppose you could say, or one of the most sought after destinations to experience, at least during anyone's visit to Australia, is a chance to visit the Great Barrier Reef. And we do that. We actually go out to the reef by catamaran. So it's a really lovely trip, probably close to an hour in length by catamaran from the harbor in Cairns. It's just a very short walk to where we get on the catamaran, but less than a 10-minute walk from our hotel front door. We board the catamaran, and as I say, we sail for close to an hour or so over to a place called Green Island. And this is what you're looking at here is Green Island. The boardwalk in the top left-hand corner, we walk up the boardwalk onto the island, and you're looking at an aerial shot there on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a fantastic day there. Of course, you have a chance to go snorkeling. All of your snorkeling gear is a part of your day trip, so it's all included. There's a little snorkel shack where you go over and pick up all your snorkel gear. And I find the majority of our guests with Westworld do indeed take advantage and do go snorkeling. It's fun to see someone go snorkeling for the first time and just check it out. But I've definitely seen some very cool fish there, and it's a lot of fun. And for those of you who aren't interested in snorkeling, and for everyone, of course, is the glass bottom boat ride, and it's pretty spectacular. So that's actually a really good shot on the bottom right hand corner of your screen, the folks looking down into the water below on our glass bottom boat ride. So that's really awesome. Lots to do. Again, you can snorkel, you can go back and snorkel again later in the day, although you want to be careful because I don't like snorkeling at low tide there. You got to be really, really careful with those corals in the water. So I always suggest to my group that we should go in the water when we have our high tide there, of course. But we snorkel, we do the glass bottom boat ride. If you look up in the top right hand corner of your screen, that's the eco walk. It takes you about a half an hour, 45 minutes to do the lovely eco walk around Green Island. So that's a lot of fun. There's a nice swimming pool. You can sit, poolside or go for a dip in the pool. We have a nice buffet style lunch there, and some people like to just sit up at the bar and have a nice cold beverage in the afternoon as well. So it's really a fun day on Green Island and a chance to experience the Great Barrier Reef up close and personal. And then the scenery changes dramatically as we make our way to the Northwest Territory, right into what they call the red center of Australia. And I find for our groups, every time I've been there, and as I say, I've been lucky enough to guide 6 tours with Westworld into the lovely country of Australia and also New Zealand. And I find for everyone, it's really interesting watching their expressions as the plane comes down, as we arrive at Uluru. We've left that tropical paradise of Cairns behind, and it's a fairly good long flight actually to Uluru, but we leave quite early in the morning, and it's only about 9 a.m. or 9:30 by the time we arrive, and that's a good thing because you want to enjoy Uluru in the cool of the day as much as possible. Now there are, of course, 2 different names for Uluru. Uluru is a native name, and there's no actual interpretation. It doesn't mean anything in particular that I've ever heard, that I've ever been told, or that I can find when I look it up either, what Uluru actually means. But certainly it is the indigenous name for Uluru. And of course, there is also the English name as well, named for Sir Henry Ayers, and that is Ayers Rock. So you might know it as Ayers Rock as well. But I find most people actually do call it by its native name, Uluru. Uluru is fascinating for a lot of different reasons, and we spend one full day and we spend one night at Uluru. So we arrive at the Ulara airport. There's really only just a small village at Uluru. It's Uluru Village, some hotels, some restaurants, and it's basically there pretty much exclusively for tourism. There certainly are native communities in the area, but we don't visit them. They're really quite private and they're not open for us to visit. So, but they do, the indigenous folk there do have a cultural center, and that's what you're looking at in the bottom lower right of your screen is the Aboriginal Cultural Center. I find the Aboriginal people of the center of Australia to be a really fascinating group of people. They're really quite shy. They're not going to come and chat you up. They're very different than the Maori people that you're going to meet once we visit New Zealand. They're very shy. They're incredible artists as well. Their culture is fascinating, and a pretty good chance you'll have the opportunity at some point in Australia to listen to a traditional didgeridoo as well too. And I guarantee you'll have the chance to buy beautiful artwork from the Aboriginal people, and that's what you're looking at in the center of the screen at the bottom. In fact, while we're visiting the rock at sunset, in fact, you see some Westworld guests there in the bottom lower left of your screen posing with their champagne at sunset. There always is Indigenous artists, local Aboriginals set up along the roadside selling their artwork. And I know it's so lovely when you're traveling to have the chance to buy locally made artwork, and it's a fantastic chance to do that. So you just approach them and you ask them what what they'd like to sell their work for. It's not set up like a little shop there at all, and you buy their work. And if you buy something from them, then you can politely say, "May I please take your picture?" And they'll probably say yes. But you never just walk up to an Aboriginal person in Australia and just take their picture. It's definitely not something that's considered proper to do. In the top left-hand corner of the screen, you're looking at Catatuga, also known as the Olgas. And this is another one of the rock formations near Uluru or near Ayers Rock. And this is something we visit. In fact, we get to do a little hike there. We hike into Wapta Gorge. And believe me, another thing that's very, very important when you're visiting the center of Australia is having a water bottle in your hand all the time. You're going to drink a lot of water because even in May, it's still going to be pretty warm there for sure. But Uluru actually changes color throughout the day. And I think maybe we'll talk more about that on the next slide, and I'll tell you a few more fun facts about Uluru. Okay, there we go. Perhaps even with the previous slide you saw and the slides you're looking at here now, you can see the different colors of the rock. The rock literally glows. It really does. It is primarily sandstone, but there are different minerals in the rock in Uluru. And one of those is feldspar, and it's considered to be the reason why the rock glows. And I am not kidding you. It is incredible how much the rock changes color. We get there in the morning. We have a chance to start some touring. We tour a bit in the afternoon, and then we take a break because it gets very, very hot in the afternoon. And then close to sunset, we go out again. We do some more touring and stop at some more of the famous sites that the local guides take us to at Ayers Rock or Uluru. It will change from that bright red color. It will eventually, turn to a brown, but it will change color. And I have actually seen it glowing pink as well too. So it's fascinating. In fact, I love to tell our Westworld groups when we go to Australia, keep your camera handy. And when we go for our sunset visit to Uluru, get your camera ready to take pictures about every 10 minutes, because it's really fun later on to see the different colors, how much it changes. Another interesting thing about Uluru, and by the way, if you were to hike it, if you were to walk around it, it would take you roughly about 3.5 hours to walk around Uluru. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. But just kind of a fun fact for you. Uluru is, to double check so I don't forget my number here, 348 meters tall. But here's an interesting fact for you, everyone. It's almost like a terrestrial iceberg in a sense. Obviously, it's not, it's a rock. But the reason they say that is because much of its mass, the majority of its mass, is in fact underground. It's believed that about 2.5 kilometers worth of Ayers Rock or Uluru is in fact under the ground, similar to an iceberg. It's only a little piece of it that sticks above the ground. So it's really, really interesting. And it is indeed sacred, very, very much so. It is sacred to the local Aboriginal people. Every now and again, I come home from Australia and someone would say to me, "Did you climb Ayers Rock?" And my answer was always the same. I said no, never really had time to do it anyways, but they never appreciated it. To them, it's sacred. And so, a lot of people have done it, but the Aboriginal people certainly didn't approve of it. And it's been outlawed as of a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, I think it is now. You're no longer allowed to actually climb Ayers Rock. But one of the special things that Westworld does when we visit the Red Center is we have a champagne sunset toast. So we go out, as I say, in the cool of the evening, and our local guide, our local tour company will have the nice chilled bottles of champagne, and it's pretty special to have a champagne toast. Of course, there's non-alcoholic drinks too, for those of you who don't want champagne, but and then we'll have some appetizers, or what they call canapes as well, and it's really a special day. It really is. So these are some of my own pictures you're looking at, some of our Westworld guests having their picture taken at sunset. And the next morning, for anyone who's game for it, and most people are, usually we get up way before dawn, and we are out at Uluru for sunrise as well. And they have a sunset point where everybody goes for sunset, and there's another spot where everybody goes, all the tour buses show up for sunrise. But it's a nice big area. It's not that crowded, really. Quickly, on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, I took that picture and I put that on there because I just wanted to reinforce that sometimes we get to see some of the incredible Australian wildlife in the wild, and this was a lucky shot. We actually got to see a dingo in the heat of the day, and of course you don't see a lot of animals in the middle of the day, but this little dingo is curled up in the shade of a picnic table, just trying to stay cool. So that was pretty nice. We were able to get fairly close for a shot of the dingo in my last trip to Australia just a couple of years ago. So yeah, thanks, Cindy. Moving on, everyone, we journey, and again, look at this. Now you can see one last shot of Uluru looking a different color once again. So it does change color so much. And they do call the center of Australia the Red Center, and they call it that for a reason, that's for sure. What has long been one of my personal favorite days of Westworld's trip to Australia and New Zealand is the day we actually drive across the outback. I think I like it just because you see so much on a motor coach. You have to fly a lot in Australia just because it's such a big country, but it's nice to drive too. And we drive all the way from Ayers Rock or Uluru to Alice Springs. It takes probably about 5 or 6 hours to drive to Alice Springs, and Alice Springs is literally at the very geological center of Australia, and a lot of fascinating things about Australia, or excuse me, about Alice Springs, I meant to say, but it's actually kind of a quirky little town. Actually, just today I was chatting with an Australian, and he was talking about the Todd River. I saw the Todd River in Alice Springs once with water in it. Most of the time it's dry, but the Aussie I was talking to just today was commenting on the regatta that they have every year in the Todd River. People build boats and have a regatta and carry their boats down the dry Todd River every year. So yeah, it's a quirky, fun town, and we overnight in Alice Springs. So yeah, looking at an overview of Alice Springs and then the sign. And then a really spectacular part of our trip. In fact, I think for many people, this is one of the highlights of the Australia portion of our tour. And that is the Outback Barbecue. It's just a short drive where we're taken from Alice out to the Outback Barbecue. And the photos you're seeing here, the center shot and then the bottom lower right, you're looking at, he's a handsome Australian cowboy. I really like him. His name is Danny. And this is Danny doing a boomerang demonstration for us. So it's that's another fun Australian thing that you actually get to see and learn about and watch a boomerang demonstration. Also in the top left-hand corner, you're seeing some of our folks from a Westworld group watching Danny make bush bread. And so he makes this damper, they call it, or bush bread. And I have no idea what he's doing. He's just throwing flour in and stuff. And the whole time he's making it, he's telling us great stories about the Australian outback and the ranching and the cattle. And it's absolutely fascinating. It's wonderful. And then later on, we have this beautiful Outback barbecue, and we have a chance to eat the damper, this bush bread, and it's so good. The other shots you're seeing there, again, just a Westworld group sitting around enjoying the show. In the top right-hand corner, later on after dinner, they get the instruments out, and we have a chance to get up and sing. And in my opinion, no trip to Australia is complete without a chance to have everyone sitting around singing Waltzing Matilda. So it's a lot of fun. And then if it's a clear night, they get the laser pointer out, and they talk all about the constellations that you see from down under. And it's one of the most beautiful starry skies I've ever seen is that night sky in the Outback. So I think it's an absolutely wonderful part of the tour, excuse me. And it's definitely one of the highlights in my opinion. There's so many things that Alice Springs is known for. And one of the things it's known for is a Royal Flying Doctor service. It's incredibly remote and isolated, the Outback of Australia. And some of you perhaps remember the show too, of the Royal Flying Doctor service. But we have a chance to actually tour their facility and their museum and learn all about it. But it is indeed an air medical service for emergency and primary health care as well, for people who live in the rural and remote and regional areas of the Outback of Australia. So we'll have a chance to tour that. There's so much you could see and do in the Outback and in Alice Springs, but we have to go because there's so much more to see. So from Alice Springs, we fly to Melbourne, and again, now we have a 3-night stay in the city of Melbourne, Australia. So we're looking at the Captain Cook Cottage in the top right-hand corner. We're looking at the market as well, and some of the other sites, the beautiful architecture of Melbourne and the city skyline as well too. And we have a city tour for our group in Melbourne, and it really is a lovely city. So some fantastic things to see there for sure. And I find I always have Westworld passengers that say to me, I like Melbourne more than I like Sydney. I think for me, I like Sydney more, but for lots of people, they actually like Melbourne better. The architecture is stunning in Melbourne, though. It really is. And one of our days, while we're situated out of Melbourne, we take a pretty good long drive. It's probably a 2.5, 3-hour drive, all told, out to a really special place called Phillips Island. On our way out to Phillips Island, we have some wonderful stops. We stop at Warwick Cattle Farm. It's a traditional Australian farm. Seeing a couple shots in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We get to see a sheep shearing demonstration out there. We get to watch the Australian cattle dogs herding sheep. And for a bunch of Canadians like us, it's pretty cool watching that happen. And boy, that sheep shearing, that should be an Olympic sport. It really should. Those guys are in really good shape, flipping over a sheep. And it's amazing how fast they can do it. It's really a wonder to behold. The picture on the left-hand side of your screen, everyone, I'm happy to tell you that's one of my pictures. And I'm happy to tell you that's how close you can get to a koala. koala in Australia. We say koala bears, but of course they're not actually bears. They're a marsupial, and they are fascinating little creatures. They really are. They're just as cute as they could possibly be. And I've never seen a koala in the wild, but we do have opportunities during our trip to see them in the zoo and in a sanctuary as well. And this is the Koala Sanctuary that you're looking at, where the koalas are in the eucalyptus trees, and we walk around on the boardwalks through the koalas. And that's a koala actually curled up sleeping on a tree. They use those little claws, and they're kind of like they look like a little beanbag koala. So they just kind of almost like mold themselves right around the tree, so they sleep and don't fall off, and use those sharp little claws. And they say they're quite drunk on eucalyptus most of the time, but they sleep a lot, that's for sure. But they do get up and move around, and pretty spectacular to see that. On the top right hand corner of your screen, you're seeing what is such a wonderful part of our trip. It's called the Penguin Parade. The smallest penguins in the world live in Australia, and on Phillip Island we have a chance to see what they call the Penguin Parade. You're looking at one of those little thumbnail pictures next to the koala. You're looking at a couple of penguins in their burrow as well. What happens is every night the penguins have, well, I guess you could call it a parade of sorts, when the penguins are coming out of the sea from a day of fishing and making their way back to the burrows. And this happens at sunset. Now, for us as visitors, there are benches and grandstands where you can actually get quite close to the beach, and we line up at sunset. It is absolutely imperative that you don't take pictures there. So you have to buy the postcards there, because you will not be able to get that picture on your camera, what you're looking at there in the top right hand corner of your screen. The reason is when your flash goes off, it blinds those little penguins, and that's when their predators, the birds of prey, come in and swoop them up and take them away. And we don't want that to happen. So there will be park rangers all over scolding you if you so much as get your camera out while we're there. So it's a good place to buy pictures but not take pictures. But you enjoy it with your eyes and your memory, and it is so fun watching these penguins come out of the water, just like a little city of little tiny people making their way back home at the end of the workday. So it's definitely a highlight, that's for sure. I just realized there's so much to say about this tour. It's I thought I was going to not have that much to say about this trip, but it turns out there's actually a lot to say. So sorry, Cindy, we'll try and move a little quicker here. But yeah, so we'll have a wonderful stay, as I say, based out of Melbourne for a few days. And yeah, so you're looking at some more shots of Melbourne and the Cathedral and Fitzroy Gardens. We're going to go for a beautiful group dinner in Melbourne, and we'll say goodbye to the city of Melbourne, and then pretty soon we're going to be flying over to New Zealand. So yeah, we're looking here, everyone, at looking over to the city of Auckland, the famous Sky Tower of Auckland. You can see just in that center shot on the right hand side of your screen. So yeah, so Auckland, capital city of New Zealand, and I really love this new itinerary that Westworld is doing for our Australia New Zealand tour. So 21 days in total, and we're going to fly over to New Zealand when we leave Australia. And the beautiful thing about it is you're going to see a lot of New Zealand this way. So rather than being on a cruise ship, we are flying to New Zealand, and we're actually going to be doing some motor coaching around New Zealand. So our first stop, we will be overnighting in Auckland, and then making our way to our next destination. And as we turn over to the next slide here, this is a part of New Zealand I love very much. Now, let me just elaborate a little bit for you on what the Waitomo Glowworm Caves are. There are various places in Australia you can see these glowworms, but as visitors, there's one place in particular where they take you to as a quote unquote tourist or as a visitor to see the glowworms. In the larvae stage, they're actually actually like little flies, but in the larvae stage, they actually glow luminescent in these dark caves. But any kind of motion, any kind of light, they will shut off their lights, however they do it, whatever it is. Forgive me, I don't understand all the biology behind it, but they will, so to speak, at least shut off their lights. So it's not a motorized boat, it's actually on a pulley, and they pull you through the glowworm caves on this boat. And my experience of being there is it felt like being on a rowboat rafting through the Milky Way. It was like something out of a fairy tale. It's absolutely magical. And I'm absolutely thrilled that we're going to have a chance to visit the Waitomo glowworm caves. I mentioned the Maori culture, very different than the very quiet and shy Aborigines with their beautiful artwork in Australia. The Maori people are extremely dynamic. They're very, very friendly, incredible music, incredible singers, and yeah, warriors as well. You can see that top right-hand corner of the screen. We visit Te Pua Cultural Center. You'll hear the music and see the dance, and it's absolutely fascinating. They're really, really interesting people, the Maori culture. And you'll find while we're in New Zealand that they use the Maori greeting all the time. It's kia ora, and kia ora means hello, goodbye, cheers, be healthy. It means a number of things, but it does just fine for hello and goodbye, and you'll hear the word kia ora all the time. So yeah, so we're looking at Te Pua, the cultural center. This part of New Zealand famous for its geysers and bubbling mud pools and that sort of thing. And of course, New Zealand is famous for something else too, the kiwi bird, the very, very elusive kiwi bird. And that's a kiwi bird that you're looking at in the bottom left-hand corner. They're tough to spot because they're nocturnal, but they do have a place at Te Pua where they have a little building that's all set up to make the kiwi believe that it's nighttime, so the kiwi will come out at night, or in the day rather, and we actually get to see the kiwi bird, so that's pretty cool. But they're very odd birds. They lay a very large egg for a bird of their size. Very, very shy. For a flightless bird, they're actually quite tough and quite hardy little birds, and very strange feathers, kind of like fur as well. So they're very, very interesting, these kiwi birds. Okay, sorry, I'll try and pick up my my pace here a little bit. I guess there's just a lot to tell you about this tour. It's a 21-day tour, by the way, altogether. So a nice overview of these two beautiful countries down under. There we go. Okay. So moving on, everyone, we do have the opportunity to visit both islands in New Zealand. I find the North Island of New Zealand is more, pastoral in nature. You have the capital city, you have cosmopolitan Auckland, and then mostly pastoral. Of course, you have Rotorua, you have the Waitomo glowworm caves, and then you have the South Island. And the South Island is dramatic, known for its incredible glaciers and incredible mountain peaks and Alps as well too. So we'll have the chance to visit Franz Josef Glacier, and also a chance to visit the beautiful town of Queenstown, New Zealand as well. So it's known for being an adventure sports capital, and not that we're going to be doing it or anything, but this is where bungee jumping first started. Actually, bungee jumping originated out of New Zealand, and specifically out of the Queenstown area. So yeah, we'll have a chance to enjoy this absolutely spectacular scenery in the South Island of New Zealand. And then moving on from there, this is truly some of the most spectacular scenery I've ever seen in New Zealand. This is Milford Sound and Fjordland National Park. So we'll have a wonderful tour through Fjordland National Park. And again, have a chance to see the glaciers, these towering, thundering waterfalls cascading into the water below, these lofty green peaks, and just really dramatic scenery of New Zealand. So I guarantee you, that Milford Sound and Fjordland will very likely, be one of the highlights of the trip for you, and certainly one of the highlights of beautiful New Zealand. And then moving on, again, we're having a look at Franz Josef Glacier here. So yeah, again, Cindy was commenting on that that picture of the fruit earlier when we were looking at the slides here. So yeah, the giant fruit, and again, a chance to explore some of the South Island and see Franz Josef Glacier as well too. So yeah, it's actually a very fast-moving glacier. So we'll have a chance to tour that. And then from there, making our way on, we also have the opportunity to do the Trans-Alpine rail journey as well through Arthur's Pass. So the scenic rail journey, about a 5-hour long rail trip. So another fantastic way to enjoy some of the spectacular scenery that is New Zealand. And you're looking at the Kiwi Bird in the top right-hand corner of your screen as well. So it is the only alpine parrot in the world. So that's a show the Kiwi Bird will be watching out for those through Arthur's Pass and through our stay in the South Island of New Zealand. Okay, and I think we're almost finished here. Yeah, this is city of Christchurch, everyone, and Christchurch is a beautiful city. The Botanical Gardens, you're looking at a couple of shots on the lower right hand side of your screen. The Botanical Gardens in Christchurch are probably just about the most beautiful botanical gardens I've ever seen in my travels. You're looking at that fun trolley train that goes through Christchurch in the top right hand corner. And something Cindy and I were talking about earlier, the cathedral in New Zealand under construction, being repaired. And that's pretty special. If you know anything about Christchurch, it is really awesome that the photos you're looking at there of the cathedral center on the right and bottom lower left, that it is being reconstructed again. Because you may be familiar with with the earthquake that happened in February of 2011. So it's been a decade since that earthquake happened, and it was a really bad earthquake in Christchurch. It destroyed that beautiful cathedral downtown, and it seemed for a time that from basically what I've heard and been told in Christchurch and seen even from visiting the city, that it really broke the spirits of the locals for a while. They were really devastated because it's such a pretty city. It's known as the Garden City, and it was just ruined from this earthquake. But they really did literally rise back up out of the rubble, and there's been a lot of work that's happened in the last 10 years to restore Christchurch, and I'm absolutely delighted that they are finally restoring that cathedral, because it just sat for a long time. It's almost like it was too upsetting to touch it, and so for a long time they didn't do anything at all. The old pipe organ was still inside, and it just sat there. So it's really wonderful that the Christchurch Cathedral is finally being restored. So what you're looking at are new pictures of the Christchurch Cathedral. Okay, everyone, that just about concludes our presentation tonight. And then finally, we have a couple of slides here that Cindy's included for us. Just to kind of as a note, because on a tour like this, we're going all the way to the other side of the world. So you are, of course, accompanied by a Westworld tour director. But our purpose, we serve the purpose of, calling you before the tour, answering questions. In a tour like this, you're probably going to have quite a few questions. How long is the flight? What should I wear? What kind of currency? What's the, how much money should I bring? There's so many different things to think about when you're going so far away. So we really serve more as the coordinator on the tour and kind of assisting along the way. And everywhere we go in Australia and New Zealand, we're going to have a local guide and driver who's going to be sharing our time. So your Westworld tour director is there to kind of help and assist and, accommodate all the needs and concerns patterns that come up every day. And these shots here, none of these pictures are actually in Australia. There's some of our other tours, but they're really good examples of what it looks like when we're traveling internationally through international airports. And believe me, airports like Sydney definitely are very big airports. So there certainly does, it does kind of feel like safety in numbers. It's nice to be together as a group. As a tour director and guide, I love carrying my big Westworld sign with me. And I like to have, kind of a reference point for people to watch when they're, with a tour group traveling through airports and on these walking tours in big cities far from home. So we really serve that purpose as your Westworld guide, just to kind of help and assist and coordinate and, take care of logistics along the way and anything that comes up, all the questions that come up every day. So we're there with you all the time. And as I say, you will have a local guide, and the local guides add so much to the tour as well. So as we turn over to the next slide, everyone, that pretty much concludes my part of the presentation. Cindy and I were having a chuckle over this picture before. I do like that with the kangaroo and the wombat. And Cindy was commenting on the camel. There are camels in Australia. They were introduced to Australia, not to New Zealand, but to the outback of Australia. They were introduced, and so yeah, they're not native, that's for sure. And they've definitely done some damage, but they've done very well in the outback of Australia. So for my part, everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of our show tonight. It truly was a pleasure to have you listening tonight. And I guess you can tell from my enthusiasm on this tour too, it's a trip I love very much. And I feel very privileged every time I have the chance to go down to Australia and New Zealand with a Westworld group, because it is a very much sought after destination, certainly for Canadians. I know for many of you, it's a sought after destination. The people in both Australia and New Zealand, they're actually very, very much like Canadians, and they're lovely people. The Aussies have a real sense of humor, they do, and the Kiwis are just as sweet and polite as they could possibly be. That's a nickname for the New Zealanders. So lovely people, incredible animals, incredible scenery, incredible food, amazing attractions. Truly, there's so much to look forward to and enjoy on this Westworld tour. So I certainly would love to share it with you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And on that note, I'll turn it back over to Cindy.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Coral, for taking us through the land down under. You're just an incredible, full of information and knowledge and enthusiasm. And obviously your love for Australia, New Zealand, and this tour certainly has come through. And we greatly appreciate you being with us here again tonight to share it with everybody. So at this time, we can get to your questions. And I do see that we do have a couple here, Coral. So let's just get to a couple of those here. The first one has Australia recovered completely from the wildfires a couple of years ago. And, obviously there was, the wildfires lasted for quite some time. The recovery is happening. It is happening slowly. I think our last tour to Australia and New Zealand was in January of 2020, just before the world shut down. And the wildfires were still raging in Australia and New Zealand at that time. Obviously, we weren't anywhere near the major fires or anything like that. And but yeah, they are recovering. The recovery is going to take a while, though, for sure. I did do a little research on that, and some of the vegetation is, the regrowth is coming, and they're pleased to see how the regrowth is coming. But it will take some time to recover fully, for sure. Let's see, there's a question here from Carol. What have the couple on the right side got on their heads? And the lady in turquoise. Now, Carol, I think you're maybe referring to the slide and when we were in Uluru.
Oh,
yeah, those were your pictures, Coral, I believe. And
I just realized what Carol meant. It's a bug hat, a bug net. It sure is. Yeah. One nice thing about going to Australia in May is I don't think that's going to be such a big problem on our next Westworld tour, but because it's the fall of the year when we're going in May, so we're definitely going to experience some lovely temperatures, mid-teens into mid-20s, but we're not going to get that plus 40, or we're probably not even going to get plus 35 in Australia in May. But we have done previous trips with Westworld in January and February, and the bugs are pretty crazy in the outback. They're like our little black flies or no-see-ums, and they actually don't bite. Those bugs, they don't bite you, but they annoy you half to death because they're trying to get the moisture from your mouth and your nose and your eyes. So those bug nets are imperative. So yeah, you've got the hat and then the net that comes down right to your neck, and then you can zip it tight. And we make sure that everybody has a good bug net. They're actually provided for you when we get to the outback. It's only that part of the tour though. It's only the outback. Once we leave Alice Springs, you never see them again, but specifically around Uluru and maybe as far as Alice Springs. But I don't think that should be too much of a problem in May, but that's what those folks were wearing.
Well, that's great, Coral. Thank you. We had another question asking about that specific thing from Belinda. She's asked if they're wearing the bug nets. Is it for black flies and so on? And so, yeah, you've answered that question too. That's great. I don't know if we have any more questions. If anybody has any more questions out there, by all means, please just type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Obviously, if we don't have any more questions at this time, you're always welcome to send us a quick email. We'll be, following up with everybody within the next day. You should be getting an email from us that will have the link to the itinerary and all the information for this tour. And you can always reach out, as I said, for more information on this tour or any others by visiting us on our website at westworldtours.com. You can email us at information@westworldtours.com. You can follow us on Facebook or by contacting your local travel agent as well. And again, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for spending the evening with us, traveling to the land down under with Coral and myself. We greatly appreciate you being here and hope you can join us again for our next virtual presentation. And everybody, please enjoy the rest of your evening and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Cindy. Sorry. It looks like there's one more question about the currency.
Oh, great.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Leanne. I missed those. Let's see. What is the currency and are they metric? Is one question from Belinda that she has asked as well. I can let you answer that, Coral.
Sure. Okay. I'm not sure what the conversion rate is right now, but and Leanne might want to speak to this as well. My experience at our previous trips is, the rate I believe is pretty similar. I think I want to say it's fairly close to the Canadian dollar, but both and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but Australia and New Zealand each have their own currencies. So yeah, you want to take a bit of cash with you, maybe get a bit of local currency for each country before you leave home, or perhaps when you get there as well. I tend to rely more on credit cards. Definitely, they're going to be readily accepted everywhere we go. And metric system, yes, very much. They really don't use the imperial system at all, or very, very little. Everything they're going to tell us will be in metric for sure. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar. They work with the dollar same as we do. Now
they're both a little less than $1, so you'll get more for your money over there.
That's good.
Yeah, so the Canadian dollar is actually stronger than the Australian and the New Zealand dollar. There you go. Awesome. Thanks, Leanne, for that. We have a question here from Lisa. Are they expecting COVID-19 restrictions to be over by then? That's a good question, Lisa. It's always an ever-changing situation, as we are all aware of, when it comes to COVID-19 and restrictions that are in place. Obviously, we did have our Australia-New Zealand tour initially scheduled for our normal time frame of departure, and we postponed it simply because of the restrictions. And we're definitely hoping that our restrictions are going to be lifted and everybody will be able to travel to Australia, New Zealand again. So yeah, we're positive on that. Again, it is an ever-changing situation, and there's no guarantee with this. But that brings up a good question. What happens if the COVID-19 restrictions are not lifted and we have to cancel the tour? We will do the same as we've done in the past. Your deposits would be refunded in full. Final payment on this particular trip is due at 90 days prior to tour start date. Your deposit is fully refundable up until 121 days prior to your tour start date. And yeah, again, if for any reason that we had to cancel this tour, for COVID-19, you would get your money back, definitely. So I appreciate you asking that question. Bruce has asked a question. How many days are spent in Australia and how many in New Zealand? That is a good question. I haven't done the math on that myself. Coral, did you have a look at that?
We
Yeah,
have
maybe?
11 days in Australia and 8 in New Zealand and 2 days in
Awesome.
flight.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. You're just Johnny on the spot with those answers. I love it. And that was the question from Bruce. So I do think that has answered all of those questions now. I do apologize if I missed anybody, but I do believe we've got them all now. So Leanne, has there any questions posted on Facebook?
The only one was Marion asked if we're booking tours for Australia and New Zealand, taking bookings. And so, of course, yes, we are.
Absolutely.
So you can contact your local travel agent or visit us online and or email us to get more information or to book.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Leanne, for